The fallacy of biblical capitalism. How religious conservatives betray Christ's teachings. Conservative preachers and influencers are eagerly promoting the idea that the Bible serves as a charter for free market capitalism. They claim that unfettered capitalism aligns with Christian principles and that economic success is a divine blessing. This fallacy, often referred to as biblical capitalism, is how the religious right reinterprets the Gospels, giving rise to the so-called prosperity gospel that has become popular among evangelicals. As if Jesus emphasized private wealth creation among his disciples and the masses, when in reality, the exact opposite is true. Jesus preached communal living, the sharing of resources, and encouraged his wealthier followers to share their blessings with the poor. If that's not socialism, I don't know what is. His teachings focused on compassion, humility, and the moral responsibility to care for the least among us. Nowhere in the Gospels does Jesus glorify the accumulation of wealth or the pursuit of profit at the expense of others. Yet, modern biblical capitalists promote doctrines such as
free market capitalism is God's blueprint for growing a nation's economy.
Throughout the Bible, the Almighty affirms private wealth creation.
The Bible's teachings on the role of government support a free market rather than socialism or communism.
For decades, religious conservatives have fiercely demonized socialism while championing unfettered capitalism. Capitalism without a sense of social responsibility or justice. But history tells a different story. The evangelical shift from social justice to corporate greed. Ironically, evangelicals were once on the opposite side of the political spectrum. In the early 20th century, they stood alongside socialists in the fight for social justice. They call it social gospel movement. Evangelicals played a key role in labor rights movements, fought against child labor, and supported economic reforms that protected the working class. They believed that caring for the poor and advocating for fairness in society were Christian obligations. Yet today, religious conservatives celebrate the very economic system that exploits the working class, one that flourished during the Gilded Age and directly contradicts Jesus' teachings. The Great Depression and the need for a moral economy. The Great Depression served as a wake-up call, revealing how government neglect had left the most vulnerable citizens to suffer. In response, social safety net programs were introduced: Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and later, the Affordable Care Act. These programs were designed to ensure that no American would be left to starve or die due to economic hardship. Not surprisingly, religious conservatives have opposed these programs since their inception. How compassionate of them. In his famous 1964 speech, Ronald Reagan explained that his opposition to Social Security and Medicare is why he switched from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party. Meanwhile, they eagerly supported handing trillions of dollars in tax cuts to the wealthy, at the expense of the middle class. To offset these tax breaks for the rich, they slashed school funding and vital social programs. When that's still not enough to cover the shortfall, they further burden the middle class by limiting tax deductions. Take Trump's Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017, set to expire this year, a so-called tax cut that, in reality, was a giveaway to the rich, while the middle class got left with scraps. One has to wonder, do these self-proclaimed Christians truly understand Jesus' teachings about love and compassion, especially for the least privileged among us? A better model, the Scandinavian example. Contrast this with Scandinavian countries, where free market capitalism coexists with strong social safety nets, earning them global recognition for economic balance and human well-being. These countries prioritize healthcare, education, and workers' rights while still fostering entrepreneurship and innovation. Ironically, Scandinavians are, by traditional measures, less religious than Americans, and yet, in their commitment to social welfare and justice, they embody Christ's teachings far better than those who claim to follow him. The dangerous future, the return of the Gilded Age. This year, the biblical capitalists of America got their wish. Trump was re-elected. To make matters worse for ordinary Americans, the richest Americans, including many Silicon Valley tech billionaires, openly flaunt their alliance with Trump and wield their power over the American people. Project 2025, which Trump initially denied supporting, is now being implemented with haste. Elon Musk acts as though he is the co-president of America, gutting the federal government in unprecedented ways. Every action seems designed to cut trillions from the federal budget, widely suspected to pave the way for extending Trump's Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017 for another 4 years. Another round of giveaways to the rich and uber-rich. All of this comes at the expense of thousands of federal workers who have lost their jobs, with many more losing access to social safety nets that would have supported them in times like this. It truly feels like we are entering a second Gilded Age, only this time it's far worse. Is this really what ordinary Americans who voted for Trump wanted, or were they duped? Can they blame their pastors for convincing them to vote against their own self-interest? Especially Latino and Asian communities who are now facing increased harassment from this administration, even those who are legal residents. Is this the beginning of America's decline? For decades, people have predicted the decline of America. But now, with corporate billionaires and corrupt politicians working hand in hand to dismantle the federal government and strip away protections for ordinary citizens, that decline may finally be upon us. The question remains, what can ordinary Americans do to prevent this from happening? The answer lies in the same place it always has: standing together, demanding justice, and refusing to be misled by those who exploit faith for profit. If history has taught us anything, it is that societies that forget their moral obligations to the poor and vulnerable ultimately crumble. America must choose whether it will uphold the true teachings of Christ, or continue down the path of destruction led by those who claim to speak in his name.